Hello, welcome to Educational Channel. Today we discuss Pavlov Conditioning. So everyone join this class. Today we discuss Pavlov Conditioning. So join the class. Today we discuss on Pavlov Conditioning. It is a very important topic for us. So join everyone. So let's start Pavlov Conditioning. Pavlov gave a classical conditioning. Pavlov, in fact, the first behavioristics who take about the classical conditioning. Okay, classical conditioning, a repeat of physiological or emotional behavior. So, what is classical conditioning? Classical conditioning is a repeat of physiological or emotional behavior or response because of some outside thing happening, right? We will see in a while what he did, how he did. Pavlov is known best for his work salivating dog, right? This is a dog. Here Pavlov experiment on this dog and he see the salivation for some condition and unconditional stimulus. His experiment conducting with dog. In this experiment, Pavlov create three condition. So Pavlov create three condition that are before conditioning, during conditioning and after conditioning. Anyone can say what is before conditioning, what is during conditioning and what is after conditioning. Anyone can say this conditioning explanation. So please tell me what is before conditioning, what is during conditioning and what is the meaning of after conditioning. Anyone can say? Afna, can you say me? What is the meaning of before conditioning or during conditioning and after conditioning? Very basic concept of this. If you have this concept, you can tell me. Okay, I tell you what is the meaning of before conditioning. In before conditioning, okay, in this situation or in this condition, he defined the unconditional stimulus. Okay, So first of all, Pavlov defined the unconditional stimulus, and for this stimulus emerged the unconditional response. So in the first steps, in the first condition, that is the before conditioning, he indicate the unconditional stimulus and the unconditional response also. Okay. We can also say that unconditional stimulus is a natural stimulus, or natural responses is also called the unconditional response. Okay. In the next slide, I will clarify what is the unconditional and the conditional stimulus. Now we understood the three conditioning process. Next, the during condition. In during condition, Pavlov defined the process, the whole process he defined in this condition, where unconditional stimulus and conditional stimulus represent the combined fully. And the last, after conditioning, he introduced the unconditional response, and he also introduced that how unconditional responses emerged with the help of conditioning stimulus. Okay, and he also see that both the unconditional stimulus and the conditional stimulus, when both are represented in front of the dog, this dog salivation is emerged, and when only the whistle is ringing out in front of the dog, the salivation is also emerged. So why this condition and why these responses are emerged, now we study on it. So first of all, we understood what is the meaning of the stimulus. Stimulus, what is it, right? One second. Stimulus. Here I write this word. Stimulus. A stimulus is something which causes a response. So here we say that a stimulus is something, okay, just a something which causes a response. So it is a cause, okay, it is a cause, and our response is the effect, right? As in, suppose I give you an example, as in failing that test was stimulus, I needed to start studying hard. So, fearing of the failure, so I need hard work. Okay, I need hard work. For what? I need hard work, it is right, but for what? For pass our exam, because I or teacher conduct a test. Teacher conduct a test, and I fear that if I fail in this test, so that's why I do very hard work for my test. So here we see that test is the cause. Because of this cause, my response is hard work. So the cause is our stimulus, and the effect, that is of my hard work, is the response. Okay. So this action is produced by the taste. That's why the taste is a stimulus. Clear? Okay. Pavlov indicate two types of stimulus. So Pavlov indicate two type of stimulus and two type of responses. So the first we talk about the stimulus and then we talk about the responses. The first two stimulus are unconditional stimulus and the conditional stimulus. Okay. So, what is the meaning of the unconditional and the conditional stimulus? Let's understood about it. Here, unconditional stimulus is something that naturally and automatically triggers a response without any learning. So, here no need to any learning. So, here we need to any learning. Without any learning, the unconditional stimulus is something that naturally and automatically triggered a response. It is one that unconditionally, naturally and automatically trigger a response, right? So it is a very natural. Suppose I give you an example. You study your paper very attentively, okay? Now we very attentively study your paper and suddenly you smelled a smell of delicious food from the kitchen and you run away to the kitchen. That means food is your stimulus and this stimulus provoked your action. But here you do not learn anything for this action. This stimulus, that means this smell of food, is a unconditional stimulus. And what is the unconditional response? That is your running. This is the unconditional response because you do not learn anything. The natural stimulus is provoked you to do something. So your action is based on this natural stimulus. When your action is based on this natural stimulus, that is called the unconditional responses. Okay, so here we stated that the unconditional stimulus is very natural. The natural things, whatever this is a very natural, this is a very unconditional and automatic trigger, right? This natural and the unconditional and automatic triggers is provoked you to do anything, to do your action. Suppose here I say next day I will give you an exam. Okay, I will conduct an exam. So you are very aware of it and today's night you do not see WhatsApp, TV or mobile. Just you study on your paper for this test. That means this awareness, this attentiveness is based on this test, right? So this test is the unconditional stimulus because for this test now you are aware, now you are attentive. Without this test you know are very attentive, you know are aware. Because of the test now you aware, now you attentive on your study, right? So this test is a very natural. You do not learn anything that when the test word is represent me, then I ever. It is not learned. It is a very natural. When the natural things is occur in your body, that is called the unconditional responses. And because that stimulus, this stimulus, which stimulus is provoking you for this natural actions, this stimulus is also called a unconditional stimulus. Okay. Next we understood the conditional stimulus. This conditional stimulus is opposed to unconditional stimulus. Here, people learn something and basis on that, people react on it. This learning objects is called the conditional stimulus. So, here we see that in the unconditional stimulus, once again, here we see that in the unconditional stimulus, we do not learn anything, we do not need to learn anything, right? We do not need to learn anything. But in the conditional stimulus, here the learning is necessary. This conditional stimulus is combined the unconditional stimulus. When the conditional stimulus or any extra stimulus, you just think that any extra stimulus combine the unconditional or the previous stimulus, the extra stimulus is combined the previous stimulus and represent these two stimulus bothly, and this representing time is very frequently, then the response, which response is emerged, that is called a conditioning response. Okay, so here we stated that in the Pavlov experiment, when we move on this picture and see that in the Pavlov experiment, when the food is given, okay, when the food is given, once again, let's understood in this picture. When the food is given in front of the dog, okay, when the food is given in front of the dog, the salivation is automatically occurred because it is very natural. When you give something to the dog, the salivation is automatically emerged. Okay, when you whistle, ringing the whistle in front of the dog is very averse. The dog's ears is very conscious because this is the natural responses basis on the natural stimulus, right? So when the Pavlov give some foods in front of the dog, so the dog salivation is occurred, that is very natural. So this food is called a unconditional response, and this salivation which is occurred, that is called a unconditional response, right? And beside on these, Pavlov also ringing the whistle, or you can say the bell. Okay, Pavlov ringing the whistle and see that there nothing, no salivation is occurred, just only the consciousness is occurred. Okay, and then here, unconditional stimulus is one that automatically triggers a response, right? Okay. Next, we move on this condition, that is the during condition. Pavlov represent the food with ringing the bell. That means, very carefully see and listen that here the extra stimulus is added, here the extra stimulus is added with the previous stimulus, right? So Pavlov represent the food with ringing in the bell. After some days later, Pavlov only ringing the bell, okay? Pavlov only ringing the bell after some days. Okay. And see, the salivation is occurred. So, what he see the salivation is occurred from the dog, and this salivation is called a conditioning response, and this bell is also called a conditioning stimulus. So here in the during condition, you represent the conditioning stimulus and also the unconditioning stimulus both for sometimes, okay, for some times or some days infrequently, and after some days later he just ringing the bell in front of the dog and the salivation is occurred. But why? Because he learned, because this dog is learned that when the whistle is ringing, that means the food is also coming. That's why the salivation is occurred from the dog. Okay, that means we have stated that this salivation, this in this after conditioning which responses is occurred, that is salivation. So this salivation is occurred because of these two stimulus, right? So the whistle is combined with the unconditional stimulus. That's why he learned that when the whistle is ringing out, that means the food is also coming. So this salivation or this responses is learned. That's why this response is called a conditioned response, and this whistle which stimulus is combined with the previous stimulus or the unconditional stimulus, that is called a, this stimulus is also called a conditioned stimulus. Clear the experiment of the Pavlov? Now we understood the principle of this concept. What is the principles of the Pavlov's theory? So now we understood that the first principle is, one second, acquisition. Here we already know this before conditioning. Already we know that during conditioning and after conditioning also, right? Now we move on the principle of this theory. Though the first principle is acquisition. What is the meaning of acquisition? Acquisition means you gain something, right? You learn something. And basis on that, when you gain something and basis on that you do the responses, that is also called a acquisition. Here, unconditional stimulus. Okay, what is unconditional stimulus? This questions what is unconditional stimulus or what is unconditional responses, is this type of question is very important. So this unconditional stimulus is equal to food, right? In this experiment, the unconditional stimulus is food. So when the unconditional stimulus is repeatedly paired with conditional stimulus, repeatedly parried, because not only one day, not only 2 days, this combination is represent frequently. I just told you in the previous slide this unconditional and the conditional stimulus is both represent in front of the dog in the frequent days, right? So that's why he has stated that the unconditional stimulus and the conditional stimulus is repeatedly paired. And that's why when the unconditional stimulus and the conditional stimulus repeatedly paired, that's why he acquired, that means the dog acquired, that when the bell is ringing, the food is also coming. That's why we see that the salivation and the response has been occurred. Okay. So here the acquisition is denoted or denoted the response. Which response? This salivation. So how he get this response? When the unconditional and the conditional response are repeatedly paired in front of the dog, then this dog is learned, right? And he gave some response. So all this situation, all this condition, when the dog is learned something from some condition, that is called a acquisition. Now we move on the next principle, that is a stimulus generalization. What is the means of stimulus generalization? Stimulus generalization is the tendency for the conditioned stimulus to evoke similar responses. So this stimulus, this conditional stimulus to evoke the similar responses, sorry for the wrong pronunciation, to evoke the similar responses after the response has been conditioned. Okay. So in the conditioned response, when the dog, just listen carefully, when the dog do not differ or do not discriminate, okay, do not discriminate the different type of stimulus, and this dog is react the different type of stimulus, that is called a stimulus generalization. I give you an example. You always give food with ringing the whistle. What? Ringing the whistle, right? To the dog. But one day, you just ringing the bell, okay, and the dog listen this sound, the dog responses to the bell sound. So you do not ringing the whistle, okay, you do not ringing the whistle, just you ringing the bell, but this bell sound and the whistle sound, the two sound are same in front of this dog. That's why he cannot discriminate to both stimulus and this stimulus sound. That's why this dog creates or occur, the salivation is occurred for this sound of the bell. This, when the dog do not discriminate the stimulus, that is called the stimulus generalization. Next, the stimulus discrimination. What is the meaning of the stimulus discrimination? Here, identify the stimulus and do not give the responses. Okay, that means when you give the two different type of stimulus, suppose this is the S1 stimulus and this is the S2 stimulus, okay, and those are both a very different type of stimulus, but the dog also discriminate these both type of stimulus and do not responses on the S2 stimulus. Okay, I give an example. You always give the food with ringing the whistle to the dog, but one day you called him as her name but do not get the food. You will see that there would be no salivation because should discriminate the voice of your and sound the bell. That's why he do not or the salivation do not occur from him. Okay, that is the stimulus discrimination. But when you ringing the bell or ringing the whistle, the salivation is occur, or the dog responses in the correct on the correct stimulus. But when you just call him just as your name, as her name, or as his name, as the dog's name, then the dog do not do any react, or the salivation do not occur, because the dog discriminate the different type of stimulus. When the dog can discriminate this situation is called the stimulus discrimination. Let's understood the extinction. Next is extinction. Extinction is when the occurs a condition response decrease or disappear. In classical conditioning, this happens when a conditional stimulus is no longer paired with an unconditional stimulus. Okay, that means now you always ringing the bell but do not get the food. Then the salivation is also not occur. Okay, that means first of all, when you in the first day you just give the food and also ringing the bell, right? So you give the food and also ringing the bell, so though both stimulus are present, and that's why the salivation or that the responses is occurred. But when you just ringing the bell, not give the food in some frequent days, then you see and you observe that the salivation is also not occurred. Why? Because when you do not condition and the unconditional stimulus do not paired and do not give in front of this dog, then the dog forget it and the responses is also not occurred. This situation is called the extinction. Next, the spontaneous recovery. What is the meaning of the spontaneous recovery? Sometimes a learned response can suddenly re-emerge even after a period of extension. That means after the extension, okay, after the extension, suddenly remerge the responses, that is called the spontaneous recovery. That means after a long time you ringing the bell and suddenly you see the salivation is also occurred. This sudden recovery is called spontaneous, and this happening is occurred after the extension. That means first of all, I just remember the all steps in these slides, that the first you just represent food food and the bell. Okay, food and the bell. Once again, food and the bell is repeatedly paired. Okay, that means food and the bell you give in front of the dog in the frequent times on frequent days. Okay, that means the unconditional food, that is the food, is repeatedly paired with the unconditional stimulus bell, and that's why the dog is learned that when the food is coming, when the bell is ringing, that means the food is also coming. Okay, and some days later, when you do this in the frequent days, and some days later, okay, after this situation, or after some days later, you just ringing the only bell, you just ringing the only bell, and you see that the stimulus, that means the dog's response is occurred only on the only bells ringing. Okay, so this only if you are ringing only the bell or only the whistle sound, the dog is know that when the ringing is when the sound is coming, that means the food is also coming. That's why the salivation is occurred, right? When the salivation is occurred, this is called a conditioned response, right? Okay, and now see, you do not ringing the bell, or okay, for you just food and bell both you represent, and only you just ringing the bell, and you do not ringing the bell. Beside the bell, you just ringing the whistle. Okay, you do not ringing the bell, but you ringing the whistle, and the dog do not discriminate the both stimulus sound, and he responses the sound of the whistle. When the dog responses the another same type of stimulus, this is called a stimulus generalization. Okay, and when the dog discriminate the both type of stimulus, suppose you just ringing the bell, okay, you ringing the bell and the salivation is occurred, it is normal. Okay, for this experiment, okay, when you are ringing the bell, the stimulus is occurred. Okay, right. And when you just called his name, just Tommy, come here. That type of you just called him. The dog is coming, but the salivation is not occurred because the dog discriminate your sound and the bell sound or the whistle sound. When the dog can discriminate both different type of stimulus, that is called a discrimination, stimulus discrimination. Clear? And when you just ringing the bell after for some frequent days, okay, then you see that or you observe that the salivation is not occurred, because now the dog is know that only the sound is coming, but the not food is not coming. Okay, the situation is just he thought about that, that's why the salivation is not occurred. So here we this situation is also called as extinction. When always ring the bell but do not get the food, that means the unconditional stimulus and the conditional stimulus is not paired and not represent in the same time. Just only you ringing the bell, that means you only represent the conditioning stimulus, not the unconditional stimulus. That's why the salivation is also stopped. This is the called extinction. And after this situation, after this extinction, so suddenly you just ringing the bell and you suddenly see that the salivation is coming. Okay, suddenly you see that the salivation is coming. That means this situation is called a spontaneous recovery. I give you an example that in our daily life it may be happen that I give you the class 10th maths or some class 6th maths. Now we do not practice the class 6 and class 10 maths. So this we all forget something, some formulas, some maths, right? And if I give you some maths to do, you do not do that. If you suddenly I give you same maths that you do not do in the previous classes, okay, in these classes I give you some maths, in same maths you do very well, and I see that suddenly you do this maths very neat and clean and very perfectly. Okay, when I see that you recover suddenly and your responses on this the maths questions or maths problems, that is called a spontaneous recovery. Okay, that means we do not react some things for some long days and suddenly the response is occurred, that is called a spontaneous recovery. Clear? Here's some education implication. Here has some education implication. I just told you, I just take say about the implications. What are these? What are the education implications on Pavlov's theory or classical conditioning? We say that if students always active their responses and observe the desired behavior, so the students behavior definitely change in a positive form. So the first point is denoted that if you want some positive behavior, so the students should be active in their responses and should observe the desired behavior. So obviously he can do that. Okay, and the second point is if you want break bad habits, that is the very untidy work or the when suppose a child is eating some chips and after completing his chips he throw the packet on the road, that is the bad habit. So this type of bad habit you just want to break this. So here to follow the Pavlov's principle, because you give some stimulus and just recovery his responses or his behaviors or his actions, right? Next is the theory Pavlov, the Thorndike's Pavlov's teacher can prepare students according to the goal. So if we follow the all principles and the teachers can easily prepare the students according to our educational goal. So these are simply the educational implication on the behalf of this principle. Clear? So here we complete this theory. If we like this video, so click the like button and obviously share my video and subscribe my channel. Thank you for listening me. Bye bye.